Tell me, Mr. Hamish, do you grow the more deadly variety of plant here?
You mean insectivorous? Yes, but nothing larger than that.
Mr. Hamish, can you explain to us what happened to the colonial collection? It seems somewhat depleted.
But, most likely maintenance work, tidying up.
You're not sure, then? But you're the deputy director.
Well, I am busy. I cannot be everywhere at once.
As deputy director, how was your relationship with Montague Dunn?
To be honest with you, Mr. Holmes, it could have been better. You see, every Tuesday he would carry out his inspection of the gardens, but it was solely to make an impression, great pretense that he cared at all. He would give out absurd orders, ignoring anyone else's opinion. He would then disappear for the rest of the week. He was what some might call a man of action. I'd say rather he was overzealous and chaotic. So after all, it was no wonder, perhaps, that he ended up like that, if you take into consideration his kind of lifestyle.
What is your opinion of Albert as a student of botany?
He's useless. I often tell him so, and I can only give him cleaning tasks. Botany is not his life's work, and his father well knew it. He was furious about it.
He was?
Oh yes, he forced his son to work here, and he never missed an opportunity to criticize him publicly.
Are you able to elaborate on that?
Well, for example, with our last exhibition here, Mr. Dunn had Albert make a presentation speech. But then, while the lad was speaking, Mr. Dunn interrupted him, asking him difficult questions, making him look like a failure. It was with the intention of making a fool of him, Mr. Holmes.
That must have been terribly humiliating.
Yes, he was crushed, and he had to leave. Everybody was making fun of poor Albert. That is, except for Miss Margaret White, who was such a nice lady and who always takes pity on Albert.
You mentioned a Miss White. Would you tell us more about her?
She is a student who works here part-time. She is quite charming indeed. She possesses a great talent for botany. You should take a look at some of her experiments that she carried out in the laboratory. Ah, if only she were not so naive.
Why naive?
The way she used to flutter around Mr. Montague Dunn. And he couldn't help but be flattered by all her attention. How could an intelligent woman such as Miss White not see through his game? I can only scratch my head and wonder.
You mentioned that Mr. Dunn led a particular lifestyle.
Well, it's no secret that he enjoyed, celebrating, shall we say? He was a member of the London Smart Set. He was famous for it. That and...
And?
He had an eye for the ladies, to put it mildly, Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Hamish, can you tell us who holds the keys to the locked greenhouses?
That would be Albert, Mr. Dunn's son. Yes, Albert keeps all the keys, and one can only imagine why.
What do you mean?
Well, he was never interested in Kew Gardens before, and now all of a sudden he is trying to act as if he owns the place. I think he wants to take over the management here. He'd do better to leave that to me. He has no experience. No, none at all.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation. Locked. Locked. Nursery. Locked. Dry. Water lily greenhouse. According to Do you hold the keys to all of these locked doors?
Yes, you can have them. But I cannot give you the keys to the cloakroom. The employees' effects are private. I am sure you understand.
Who is Miss Margaret White?
Ah, she is the young lady who studies with me. She visits here sometimes to help out with the greenhouses. In fact, she should be here today. She wanted to work at the seed house. That's the small greenhouse across from the large glass house.
We noticed that a part of the colonial collection has been cleared.
Ah, at the moment I'm just dealing with the storage room. I don't know much about the other rooms.
I imagine that your relationship with your father may have been a strained one.
Yes. I cannot say that he was a kind man, for he never listened to me at all. He forced me to work here. But now, after his death, I've been pondering it over. Perhaps he wasn't so wrong about me after all. I have to follow his path, and I have to manage Kew Gardens, and I can do it. I can be as good as any other who works here.
Would you please tell us about Martin Hamish, the deputy director?
Well, I have to tell you that Mr. Hamish is not and has never been the deputy director of Kew Gardens. My father would not have tolerated it.
Indeed? That is most interesting. He told us that he was.
Yes, because he believes that the management should be passed down to him now that my father is dead. But in actual fact, Mr. Hamish only has the honour of being the garden's longest-serving employee. In fact, if we are to think logically at all, it should be me who takes over the management of Kew Gardens.
Do you not have a good relationship with Mr. Hamish?
I suppose so. But we have very little in common. Mr. Hamish loves his plants and Kew Gardens, and I cannot say that I share his passion.
I see. And how was his relationship with your father?
Oh, he hated my father. It was obvious. He would be furious whenever my father boasted of Kew Gardens in the newspapers or at conferences. He was convinced that my father was stealing all of the credit for himself. But my father treated Mr. Hamish in the same way as he treated anyone, dismissively, with indifference.
Thank you, young man. We shall see you again soon. These plants come from all the territories of the British Empire.
Look, Holmes, this charming lady must be Miss White. She's entering the seed house.
Seed house. Open.
Good day to you, miss. You have some very beautiful plants here.
Why, thank you, sir. And good day to you, too. But
Oh, I do beg your pardon. My name is Dr. John Watson. This is my good friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
I am honored to make your acquaintance, gentlemen. My name is Margaret White. Excuse me, but are you Sherlock Holmes, the great detective?
Yes, I am he.
What a pleasure to see you here at Kew Gardens. Are you working on a case?
Yes, a theft of plants that took place here a few days ago after their most recent exhibition.
Oh yes, of course. I quite forgot about that.
Oh, it's quite understandable that you might forget about the theft of the plants, miss, after the tragedy that took place here.
Yes. The director was a truly good man. It is such a terrible misfortune.
Would you happen to know why part of the colonial collection was cleared?
No, I have never been there.
Most of the doors in Kew Gardens are locked. Do you have a key to this room?
Oh, yes. Albert gave me a set of duplicate keys. He agreed I might carry out my studies without disturbing him. It is only temporary.
Do you work here?
Part-time only. I am a biology student at the London University. I attend the same classes as the son of Mr. Montague Dunn. That is how I found my chance to work here for part of my thesis, you see. It is a great honor.
How well did you know Mr. Montague Dunn?
He was a master, a great leader. I saw him almost as a spiritual father.
He had an exceptional nature?
Oh yes, indeed. He was always so active and so optimistic, and very nice to me. Although he could behave harshly towards his son.
Why so?
He loved his son dearly and wanted the very best for him. It made him extremely demanding. Albert, who is naturally shy, suffered because of it.
Thank you, miss. None of the 3 people who work at Kew Gardens know why half of the colonial collection was cleared. So, someone is lying. It is obvious. Materials for college study. They belong to Albert. A book about ships. Nothing at all to do with plants. These leather gloves are new and of good quality. They do not appear to have been used. This place serves as Albert's office. This is one of the outlets of the ventilation system.
What should we do next, Holmes?
Nursery. The seeds of plant species are stored here. It is a bust of Montague Dunn. I am curious if the marble that we found will fit. Here it is. The marble fragment that we found in the Colonial Collection Room is what they have in common. These young plants must be delicate if they are kept in the nursery. A thesis written by Martin Hamish. A glasses case. It is empty. This area serves as Martin Hamish's office. This poster is for an exhibition that Martin Hamish was directing, but it had nothing to do with Kew Gardens. This certificate belongs to Martin Hamish. He won a horticultural competition. We can see the interior of the Colonial Collection Room from this window. There was a bottle here. It left behind a trace of the substance that pervaded the laboratory.
Gold dust? Good heavens. What's it doing here?
The gold is almost immune to chemical attacks, so it may be a valuable auxiliary for various experiments.
But why would anyone perform such experiments in a botanical garden?
Several drops of the substance were spilled. Someone carried this bottle around. Several drops of the bottle is no longer here, but it is possible to detect a faint scent. We need a good nose.
A phonograph used for voice recording. Remarkable.
Yes, this is quite a modern laboratory.
And it seems clear from these multiple experiments that plants do respond to their environment and have a form of consciousness. Margaret White, February 1895. Report number 245.
Study report. I don't hear anything.
Martin Hamish's perception of plants. The notion of communication in the plant world has long been considered marginal, yet I remain convinced that some plants do indeed transmit chemical signals in the event of attack.
A study report by Martin Hamish. Chemicals, a sufficient quantity for some serious experiments. A botany book. This student's book belongs to Albert. It appears as though the protective equipment is missing from here. Gloves, waterproof aprons, everything one might need for self-protection.
Do they grow dangerous plants here?
Such masks are generally worn when dealing with toxic chemicals. Locked.
Holmes, Albert Dunn didn't give us the key to this door.
It does not matter. We will open it. Open. Miss White's locker. These jewels must be worth a small fortune. Apparently, Miss White is a capable student. A draft of the letter that Miss White sent to her parents. A vanity purse. It is of high quality. Martin Hamish's locker. A review on rare and exotic plants. Martin Hamish has written several pieces. Martin Hamish studied chemistry. Interesting. Father and I. Kew Gardens. Albert's locker. A picture of Miss White and Albert in front of the University of London.
And they seem to get along.
Specialist articles on shipyards and ship construction. Albert Dunn has a great passion for shipbuilding and the sea. A rejection letter from the British Royal Naval College. Mr. Hamish, was someone from your family connected with Kew Gardens?
Family? No. I'm the only one with a passion for botany.
I do not think so. This photograph of you and your father at Kew Gardens suggests the opposite.
But you have no right to.
Do tell us more about your father.
He was, indeed, the greatest botanist of his time in the British Empire. He worked together with Montague Dunn until the end of his life. He brought me in at the age of 12.
Did he get on well with Mr. Dunn?
No, I couldn't say that. They expanded Kew Gardens together, that was all. And it was all my father's work, for Dunn always lived the high life.
So Mr. Dunn was not helping your father?
Oh, yes, he provided the financial support. And as far as he was concerned, that fulfilled his role. But the worst of it was, he declared himself as the master of Kew Gardens. Fame meant nothing to my father. so it was easy for Mr. Dunn to take all the credit.
There is a bust of Montague Dunn in the nursery.
A bust? Oh, that old thing. Further proof of that outrageous ego of his.
But why in that room, in particular?
Oh, I don't know, but it has always been there.
There is a bust. But why?
Oh, I don't know, but it has always been there.
There is a bust of...
Oh, I don't know, but it has always been there.
It is strange, because I recovered a fragment of the bust inside the Colonial Collection Room.
Really? Oh, well, so I am mistaken. It ought to have been removed during the cleanup. This room is so small.
Do you know who moved it?
I have no idea. Surely Mr. Dunn requested it. Do you have any more questions like this? Because fragments of rock are not my responsibility.
Evidently. Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation.